How do I know?
Nope.
Are all set?
No, I know.
All set.
No.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. This is the Town Council Workshop, and I'm Brian Hart. I'll be serving as chair for the meeting. Chairman Jennifer Jarvis is on vacation, much deserved, so she won't be here this evening. We have an agenda for the Town Council meeting. A part of that is the joint meeting with the Newmarket School Board. The school board just finished their meeting, so the two applicants for the ZBA and downtown TIF are not here, so with the permission of the council, I'll just go right to the school board portion, and we'll do that once we're done with the school board so they can go home. Does that sound okay? All right. So, I believe this meeting was proposed and requested by the school board, and the goal being to discuss upcoming projects of the town and school over the next 5-year period or more. So I would imagine it's so we can best plan the expenditure of taxpayer dollars on those different projects and try to coordinate to the extent we can any shared resources and planning purposes. Is that accurate? Is there any other goals of the school board?
No, when we went through our facility process, thank you, Brian, by the way. When we went through our facility process last year, one of the pieces of input we heard was that there should be communication and coordination at some level between the school board and the town council. We heard that at candidates night, and we wanted to go ahead and initiate, take the next step in that process, which is just making sure that we have some lines of communication open. Mike's been coming to our meetings. It's been very, very helpful as a conduit of information. But we wanted to meet with you collectively and give you an idea of what we have in mind for the next 5 years so that we can talk about, and we don't have to necessarily resolve all issues tonight, but at least get issues out on the table so that we can start talking about them and people can have an idea that we are, in fact, communicating effectively and working at least near each other, if not with each other, on significant issues that affect the community as a whole. So we gave Mike a list. We had discussed this at our June 15th meeting. I gave Mike a list, I think, of 10 items that we generally had in mind. We can probably boil it down a little bit even more than that, and I think we have one item to add, at least, that did not come up at that meeting. And I'm happy to outline for you what's going on here so that we can then get the discussion rolling, and other members of the school board and the superintendent can chime in as they see appropriate, and then you all at least will have an idea of what we're doing and where we're coming from.
Okay, so before you do that, let me just, it's a little hard to see everybody because they're all on both sides of me far away. So we don't have the little buzzer thing either. So I'll just try to coordinate the conversation, but an open roundtable discussion is probably the best format. And then the other part would be, I think a lot of these questions might have to be answered by the town administrator. So of course we'll welcome his input. And then make sure you speak up because we want to make sure the folks at home can hear us so if you're near a microphone or if we can pass them around for those that don't have them in front of them, that'd be great. So with that, Chris, please go ahead and outline the 10 areas that were in the original memo and then the additional one.
Sure. I'm going to start with the school district priorities first. And they are in rough order of significance for us. Number one is within the next 5 years, and hopefully much sooner, we hope to acquire a significant parcel of land to be used for future school facilities. The school district owns no more land than the direct sites that the schools sit on, which are not adequate at all under current standards. And so in order to secure the future of our school district facilities, we're going to be acquiring land, hopefully, with the permission of the voters. And we are always happy to talk to the town council to the extent that there is an interest in recreational facilities, there is an interest in exploring water sources and things of that nature. We're always open to that discussion and encourage it. But that is a major priority of the school board that we're going to be pursuing for as long as is necessary to get it done. Issue number 2 is the renovation and or replacement of our existing junior-senior high school facility. The need to address the very significant shortcomings of that facility hasn't changed, and we are continuing with our facilities process, and you're going to be seeing continued action on that, again, as far as this school board is concerned, for the foreseeable future until that issue gets addressed in a way that meets our needs and addresses our obligations under current state regulations. Closely connected with that is issues of water and sewer. In order for us to do necessary and appropriate planning for the future of our facilities, we require a fair amount of cooperation and assistance from the water and sewer departments and the town administration generally, in terms of sharing information about the capabilities of the system and what we can do to have our need for those facilities accommodated within the context of the town's overall water and sewer plans. So we have engineers and architects and folks like that working for us who require information from time to time from town sources, and we would anticipate and hope for cooperation in that respect. Generally, speaking more generally now, those are clearly very specific goals that we have that are priority for us. Budget planning in general is something we each have a member on the budget committee. The school board has had very good luck in recent years folding the budget committee into our planning process very early. Certainly in the last 3 to 4 years, we've been doing that and having very good luck. I know that Al and Kathy meet monthly, and I'm sure they talk generally about what they're looking for in terms of budgets. This is a contract negotiation year for us, and we have a few things we're looking at in addition to that in our budget, but I don't think we're anticipating anything drastic or different. But I think in general it's good for us to keep track of what significant events we anticipate happening in our budgets. Continuing to move down the list, we are interested in the electric power generation pilot project that was approved by the voters this past March, and the extent to which we can either accommodate that use or be accommodated within it somehow. The school district is obviously a significant consumer of electricity, so to the extent we can take advantage of that and provide space if we acquire land or whatever we can do to assist in that effort, we're happy to hear about. We've been taking, I guess, fair to say, baby steps towards making increasing use of Channel 13 in terms of broadcasting various things. We want to broadcast more and more of our meetings, more and more of our committee meetings. There's a question, and I think it's a common question for both of us in terms of the availability of staffing for Channel 13 to make it the resource that it can be, and I think that people ultimately would hope it would be for the community. So that's just an item of ongoing interest to us. Something that's kind of been floating around under the surface but is increasingly starting to become an issue, and I think this is very much a common issue for us, for the town council and the school board, is the light poles, the light stanchions at Landrock Field. They're really tall telephone poles, essentially. We have not had any luck getting an engineer or anybody with comparable expertise to evaluate the useful life of those poles. We're very concerned that they are deteriorating and that they pose a safety issue to students and community members and the public in general. And we think that some kind of a plan should be made or some attention paid to what is there a plan to replace those things or to otherwise make them so that we can have some assurance they're not going to fall over on somebody at some point. I'm just not sure if there's a plan for that. And that's something I think some attention should be paid to. Kathy's been in touch with Jim Hilton about that, but that might be something that we can all give some thought to. Probably something to be best worked out between the administrations. In any event, having all that in mind, there's some informational things in here that aren't as budget critical, aren't as capital improvement critical, that you can see in the list. But we're very interested in knowing what the town foresees, what the town council foresees doing in the next 5 years or so in terms of capital improvements or other items that could impact the school district and what it does, so that we can provide support where it's appropriate and make sure that we're presenting the voters with a coherent picture, coherent common picture of where the community is going. So I'm done. Have I missed anything very significant?
Well, Chris, I just wanted to point out, too, I appreciate that you and Mr. Hart did a good job explaining to everybody on television what's happening. Having the town council and the school board meeting together is an unusual and positive event. I just wanted to make sure that we also, for the benefit of the people watching on television, acknowledge the presence of our 3 state representatives from Newmarket as well. Folks may not realize that they're here, so I think it'd be appropriate to know that they're here to contribute too. And we thank you for your presence.
Linda, Cliff? Kathy, have I missed anything significant?
Okay. Well, thanks for the introduction to an explanation of the list that we received. The council did not have the opportunity to prepare a similar list, but I imagine each one of us might have thought about this in advance, wrote their own list, and I'm sure the town administrator did as well. And he did give us a thorough update on the status of significant projects a few weeks ago. So I think we all have a sense of those that are hanging right now. Maybe the way to proceed is first to outline what the major capital projects that we foresee.
Mm-hmm.
Because some of the other issues are probably best left to the administrator of the school and the town discussing,
Yes.
and then coming back to the council with some ideas and to the school board. In terms of the capital projects, I'll just run off a list of what I'm aware of and what I remembered when I wrote down the list, and then allow the town administrator to update it and then get additional input from the council members. Obviously, one of the significant ones is phase 2 of the downtown project, and we are on track for that project to be put out to bid this fall with the construction next year.
So
Yeah.
next spring, you're going to break ground in the spring?
That's everything I've heard so far, and that's the track we want to stay on. The one remaining question is whether or not the utilities will be undergrounded, and we haven't formulated a plan on that yet. I think the discussion will revolve around what the costs are when we get the bids back. We see those costs, and we can decide if we want to offer the voters an opportunity to bond the additional funding or to proceed with an alternative plan.
So you're considering doing the undergrounding as a price adder,
Yes.
something to add
That's
on
been
to
a
the base
suggestion.
contract?
That's been a suggestion the town administrator made during the large capital project update, but the council hasn't taken a position on that approach yet, so I'm just speaking in
Do you
generalities.
have a sense of the dollar figure?
No.
$1.5 million, Al? No idea?
What, on the utilities?
Yeah. 2 million?
We, additional bonding would be in the order of 1.2 million with the last estimates we had.
And how old are the estimates?
Pardon me?
How old is the estimate?
The estimates were updated from the 1998-99 figures to 205, and then they were indexed with
Okay.
a 5% escalator until 2008.
Oh, so 1.2 is a pretty hard number.
We hope.
We hope.
Okay,
But that's before gas hit $3 a gallon and stayed there,
understood.
and that's affecting asphalt and trucking and everything related.
Thank you.
Sure. I'm just going to go through the list, and we can add more. But we also are evaluating, obviously, the water situation. That's probably on the top priority of the council. And there's significant work underway there that will, I think, yield results within the next 1 to 2 years. And what I mean by results is actually having water.
Can you give me an idea of what's in progress?
Well, right now, we're evaluating there's 3 areas of work. the ones that look the most promising are the artificial recharge of the existing aquifer bed systems up on the Route 152 area. And
Isn't that already in place?
that was in place, but the way it was working previously was that the water plant was pumping treated water with all the disinfection byproducts that we currently exceed from the water plant to the sand bed system, and then it was going through that. We are hoping to do is use the sand bed system to actually treat the Lamprey River water.
Mm-hmm.
There was when we were doing the reverse, where we were using treated water into the aquifer, we were finding spikes of the disinfection byproducts. Not to the point where they exceeded limits, but they were adding to the system. So that's in the stage where there's testing going on, lab bench testing, where they take samples of the material from the site
Mm-hmm.
and take samples of the water and do mini runs to see what happens. Those results are expected this summer or early fall. There was a minor mistake made by the company; they had to redo it. And if that goes forward, there's several phases to that, including getting DES permits, getting temporary easements from landowners to run the water line from the Lamprey River site, which will be in Newmarket, not in Lee, out to the site. So that's a pretty extensive process to get there. The second part is we are evaluating potential groundwater sources throughout town. The entire town has been evaluated. They've done mapping, and now they're what I call is fancy dowsing, where they go out with electronic equipment and on the sites that have been identified through the mapping to determine if those sites have characteristics that would indicate high yields of water. And then from there, they pinpoint it further, and they do, with landowner permission, all this is with landowner permission, they do actual wells, test wells, and then if those are productive, then they do a 24-hour pump test and some other tests, and if that works out, then we go to DES for additional permitting.
Mm-hmm.
And that we're hoping to do some test wells this fall. Is that accurate?
That's the target.
And then it's about 1 year to 2 years before you get into production.
Permitting is like a year, isn't it?
Yeah, from the point where you identify the well and do the initial pump test to the point, yeah.
So artificial recharge, you're looking optimistically at a 2 to 3 year time frame?
2.
I say optimistically because nothing ever goes the way you
Never
think it
goes
will.
perfectly.
Okay.
Related to water is we are evaluating.
I'm sorry, Brian. And if the artificial recharge works, is that going to be sufficient to meet our needs for the foreseeable future?
Well, what it does is I don't think that would be the appropriate way to
Ask the question.
discuss it, because we are ultimately, the goal, in my opinion, and I think the council agrees, is that we need to have 2 water sources that are independent of each other, that if one gets damaged, polluted, or destroyed, the other one's available. That's the best system for any town. So relying just on the sand bed, even if it had ultimately infinite supply by using the river, if there ever was a problem like the MBTE exceeding limits and we couldn't treat it, we wouldn't want to be in that situation. So
what you're looking for is not capacity. You're looking for excess capacity and redundant capacity. if possible.
Ideally.
Okay. I hate to, you guys jump in.
Okay.
You're doing a good
Then the
job.
other aspect of water is we received an initial engineering study for an additional water tank. We have water pressure issues across the Durham side,
Yes.
and an additional water tank plus upgrades of the water lines on the Durham side on 108 would address those problems. And that's
Say 2 million.
about $2 million of expenses. We do have bonding capacity for about 800,000 of that, I think it was.
No, we have approximately 2.
And
2 million.
I just remember we passed a bond before I was in the council for a water tank, so I was thinking that money.
It was 2.2, I think, ultimately altogether.
So we already have existing bonding capacity to do that.
I'm sorry, this is a $1 million a million gallon standpipe?
Uh,
850?
No. It's another, we're talking a total of what? Another 750,000 gallons. Okay.
It gets us to within the projected range, to the recommended range of capacity for a town with the future population projections that we have.
Okay, so that should be sufficient, is the vision.
Give us potentially a little over a 2-day supply in tanks. Okay? Today, we have less than a day.
I understand.
Let's see, the other projects,
I'm sorry, what's the
Sure.
time frame on the standpipe, if everything goes well?
I think the council is going to probably discuss in the upcoming workshop the report and give direction. Probably from that point of making a decision and going forward is a year to year and
Yes.
a half.
Here.
And the Durham side is the optimum place to put the standpipe?
No, the standpipe was recommended to be adjacent to the existing standpipe because it's the one of the highest points in town, and therefore you don't have to build one of those elevated light bulbs
Like
like
at the
Epping
Walmart in
has.
Epping?
Yeah,
Do you-
Epping got a really good deal. They bought that used. It was deconstructed and brought to them and put up.
I think of a
And
golf ball
Walmart.
on a tee whenever I see it.
Do you have any,
Walmart paid for a lot of that cost.
looking at, you mentioned artificial recharge of the aquifer and finding additional groundwater sources in town. Do you have any estimates on the cost of those, besides the $2 million for the additional standpipe?
The water system projections are, depending on the source for the groundwater, it's several $1 million.
Okay.
Several. You know, we put forward a $6 million bond last year.
Right.
That was based on what we thought was going to be an ideal location. The work wasn't done in the point where we could explain it clearly enough to the public, so,
The trick is you have to distribute it.
Yeah.
Not just take it out of the ground, you gotta distribute it.
Yeah.
You might have to treat it anyway.
yeah. The third area looks like it's not going to be tenable is the Follett's Brook as a surface water source. The information that we've been receiving from DES indicates that there will be significant expense in just to get to the point of them making a decision through extensive studies of the surface water flow rates, the ecological impacts, in-stream flow, et cetera.
Right.
The wells dug in that area didn't, from what I understand, produce enough water to by themselves be sufficient. They could supplement a flow within the brook, but again, DES probably wouldn't like that. So we're kind of in a holding pattern on that, and there hasn't been much progress. And we are doing some water quality testing on a regular basis, so we have that data. But it seems they're going to want more extensive data than we currently have, and the projections are at least 100,000 or more in studies just to get there. And then there's a not consensus on how much water it would actually provide.
Right, because you
And
don't know until you do all the testing.
What we learned at the last meeting was that there's not, usually they don't like you to take water out of a brook to a point where there's no more water. So they put, 20%, we want at least 20% of the maximum flow at all times or something like that.
Sure.
They are also they're doing both ends. So even on high flows, they want to maintain a certain level of flow. So they're making the range of water availability tighter and tighter.
Hmm.
It's a little hard to explain, but
I think I
they're not
understand
just
that.
worried about low flow, they're worried about high flow, which doesn't really make sense, but it does to them.
I don't need to understand the science. I think what you're saying is that it becomes diminishing returns rapidly.
Yes. The hope was that we could take water out during the winter and spring when there's the most flow, supplement, not use the wells.
Mm-hmm.
But it appears that even if we could do that during that time frame, it wouldn't be as much water as you think because of this interpretation by DES.
Mm-hmm. It looks like the idea of an entirely new water plant for Follett's Brook, or to basically replace the existing plant has fallen off the list.
I think we are investigating these other opportunities because of the price tag of $12 to $15 million for that and the impact that would have on the rates.
Yes.
So we are hoping that we'll have enough information on these other opportunities to decide.
Well, we're pleased to hear that because this is something that was thrown at us in our school facility process, over which obviously we have no control. And but it's good to hear that you're exploring a bunch of other opportunities, or at least some other opportunities, and doing the best you can with
Well,
that.
our big issue too is to get just some kind of sense of the proportion of the cost of the final, as best we can estimate at this point. When we get to that point, if we have a redundant water sources and we have plentiful water sources, as best we can estimate right now, get a sense of what that final price tag is going to be, which I think you've given us.
It's
But
in process.
It's in process. It's still the biggest thing with the distribution system is you put a well out near town, you're not going to have a lot of expense because you can just run a line to the existing line. But if you put it out on one of the edges of town, then you're going to have millions of dollars just laying pipe. but that's millions of dollars less than a new treatment plant. So that's why it's being evaluated.
Right.
20 years ago, when they did the last groundwater study, it didn't really make sense to look at the outskirts of town because the economics were different.
Right.
Just quickly, the other thing is, of course, we're trying to identify recreation fields. There's two areas underway. One is the fields on Packers Falls Road, which would be one small field, kind of as a practice field.
Right.
And we are in the process of initial engineering for that, and I think the council will be getting back an initial report at the end of this month from the timeline I
What's
saw.
the timetable? Yeah.
And then there's a possibility of some land from a development being available for athletic fields. And it's been presented to the planning board. That's the, what's the name of the subdivision? They have some name for it, I can't remember.
Driving range?
The driving range, yeah, that's the property.
Right.
The possibility of the front area being available for athletic fields. So we're actively looking at that. The council did a site walk out there. Haley Oak? Haley Oaks is the name of the subdivision.
Well, this is a good time for me to tell you that this week the superintendent had a conversation with somebody, and we're looking at picking up some land near our elementary school
Mhm.
and converting it or doing something such that additional playing field space would be available near the elementary school.
I think it's very clear that at the elementary school, there's not enough room even for parking. For those of you that have a chance to be there when school's in session, let alone the opportunity for a play area for the students or during the summer. There is no field available that's safe for the students to play. And so I've had some discussions with abutters and behind the school, and I'm going to meet with them to discuss the feasibility of extending the back area of the elementary school in order to provide either parking or field space. We'll reverse, right now parking's in the front, we'll just, reverse whatever that land will call for, because there's a clear need for space for younger students to play kickball, soccer, and t-ball, and those kinds of things.
Just to have green space.
And that's not available to them right now.
So I think what we would do is the stuff that we've discussed with you, and maybe I'm jumping ahead, make this sort of standing items for me as your rep to report on monthly. And then if Mike can take the stuff you've discussed, phase 2 and the various water and the recreation fields, and make those standing items to talk to us about, I think we'll get a long way towards our goal of keeping in touch. I for one didn't realize that you guys were still actively looking for recreation fields. I think it's great, but I just didn't. There's lots of other stuff to think about.
Well, I want to clarify something. The Open Space Committee, who is there's the $500,000 left in the bond that we've committed to the town.
Yeah, we've spent some of it on
Right.
due diligence.
And there was a suggestion from the Open Space Committee that be invested in like a 6-month CD. So if the school board concurs that time frame makes sense, then we can get another $25,000 of revenue, or $12,000.
Sue and I had a chance to talk to Melanie about
Okay,
that,
great.
so she can get better rates with CDs for short periods of time, and we would not need to access that money at that,
And
so it
The
made
school board
great
hasn't
sense.
had a chance to talk about it and act on it, but we've heard about it.
It just seemed, from my understanding, I expressed to the committee that there didn't seem to be any active land acquisition possibilities that would require that money in the next 5 or 6 months. There's some other money left over, about another $100,000 or so, that the Open Space Committee and the Town Council haven't spent on projects that might be available, or if the council decided to be used for the land acquisition necessary for the water supply. But that hasn't been decided, but it's something that's been thought. The Open Space Committee, just to clarify, is meeting on a quarterly basis and is not actively pursuing additional recreational fields, given the limited amount of money available and the Packers Falls and now the possibility of the Quox property. With that, I'm going to stop talking and let the town administrator update on anything significant that's left, and then get the input from the rest of the council, and we'll just go right around, let everybody speak.
I don't know how far out you want to go for capital improvements, but I think Brian's done a good job in everything that's imminent, probably in the next 2 to 3 years. We do have an area in our wastewater treatment plant. There's going to be study completed, a system evaluation take place this coming summer, 2007. And that's a minor expense at this point in time. What it's leading up to is a major investment in our wastewater treatment plant. When we did the facilities plan, 201 facilities plan, I think it was in 2000, the schedule is calling for plan development in 2010, projected construction of renovations or new wastewater treatment technology 2012, 2014, and that will be a major investment. Relative to we don't really have a handle on what the recharge cost would be right now, but last year on a estimate on a site which would be in the furthermost edge of town, the projected cost was $6 million, and only 500,000 of that was scheduled for land acquisition. Bulk of it was for establishing the well and the transmission system. Other than that, we just have our usual capital improvement programs, road improvement. As far as the lighting at the ball field, I believe that is in our capital improvement program. We do have some money set aside for that. We could have saved you a little effort on that because we tried 2 years ago to get someone to evaluate them, and we couldn't. Okay.
Well, it's not funny, but
Well, it's just interesting, the same result after the same discussion.
yeah.
I think that's it. As I said, I think Brian did a very good job of updating you on all the eminent things here in the next 2 or 3 years.
Let me just have
I forgot one thing, Brian, so in case the council has something to say as we go around. The other important thing is we have formed a committee to take a look at potential reuse of the existing school facility. And we have invited the council to, give us a representative to that, because I think that's something you guys are obviously far more in tune with overall development effort for planning and stuff. And so I think it would be helpful and productive if you can talk among yourselves. And Cliff is our representative to that group. I'm trying to get other community groups involved also, just to talk about if we wanted to return the school facility to the tax rolls, what uses, how does it fit into the larger development scheme the council's been working on for years and years now, and just make sure that we're all on the same page, because it's not really our mission. So I put that out there as something, if you can put that on an agenda at some point and send us a sacrifice. That would be great.
Okay. Well,
Cliff is vicious.
I know he's my neighbor. He's okay. So, just joking.
Sorry.
Okay. So I'd like to let each council member just go around Jerry and then around the table. What are you looking for? And if you have any additional thoughts on the items I commented on, or about other significant capital improvements that you think we missed or need to expand on.
What you got?
Wilford?
No, I had one and you covered it. Thank you. Nothing more at this time.
A thought on
Pull the mic down and make sure it gets.
I had a thought on the lights at Landrock Field. Possibly, has anyone contacted PSNH? Seeing they have a number of poles, they ought to be quite expertise in that field. Whether we have to pay for it or that would be something they would do in kind, that might be an option. I also want to state that it's a pleasure working with the school board, and having this meeting is absolutely fabulous. So here's Mike.
I'm good.
Dana?
Yes, I do have a couple of questions. Reading your topics for discussion, how would you, the school board, how would you proceed to work with item number 10, status of Channel 13?
Just before we go there, Dana, I just want to focus on the capital improvements first.
Oh,
and
I
then,
thought
and then
you-
go on to the.
Oh, okay, so
if
we
you
gotta
have
go
any-
one topic at a time?
Oh, Probably not that slow.
I was gonna say, we'll be here all night.
No. I just want to get input on the capital improvements, then can go on to the other items to see if there's anything else.
Okay, the other question I have on that one is the field, the property you're looking behind the elementary school, without divulging who it is, can you give me a sense of how much land there would be there?
17 acres?
17 acres.
Approximately 17 acres?
There's,
Great.
There's also some land available on the front side that we would like to have some discussions around also.
Right, because I had thought about that myself, is you
And,
have some land right up front,
right.
but there's houses up in
Right.
front of that.
Right.
It looks like green space up there also. That's all I had, thank you.
Okay, thank you. The only other thing that came to mind is just to check in with the town administrator, since it's 5 years out, and sometimes things come up quickly, but I know in this building, there's not a space issue, but I'm just wondering, I don't foresee us hiring any more staff, except for maybe fire department members, and they wouldn't be in this building, and that's gonna be with voters' approval, but in the next 5 years, do you see any of the major facilities? I know police, we've gotten input from the previous chief that there's no need, but maybe it would be good to double check with Chief Sear. Library, and then the town hall facility. Do we have major renovations or expansion needs in any of those facilities that you foresee in the next 5 years?
Well, we certainly, as far as town hall, we certainly are stressed for storage space, and I think includes the school. And in the existing facility that we have right now, that we use, we certainly can add staff. We just don't have any place to put them, so that's out of the question. Library, I don't know what to say on that. I believe that the library is adequate at this point in time. They're expanding and doing some work in their basement. They put an elevator in to provide extra room. I think, I haven't heard of any plans where they are planning a major expansion of the library. Again, if we don't add staff to the police department, it should be adequate for the next 5 to 10 years anyway.
do you have storage space available in the fire department public works building? I don't know what kind of storage you're looking for. But
We could, we'd have to make some space. The difficulty with storing off premises, and we have, the town has used the attic area of the water treatment plant for years. It hasn't been appropriately set up, but they have used it. The difficulty is there's a lot of information that we have to revisit quite frequently.
Right.
And when it's off-site, you're spending a lot of time going back and forth. And then it needs to be, that area needs to be managed also quite well, because you've got to have a filing system, and you've got to know where it is once you put it there.
Sure, of course.
So does the school board have any questions about the items? I mean, you asked them as we went along, but are there any other questions that came up while you're thinking about those capital improvements?
I was just trying to recall, Mr. Dixon mentioned, I think in my notes, I wrote down the 2012 to 2014 timeframe, the major upgrade to the wastewater treatment facility. Can you expound upon that, and perhaps, that's far away, I realize, to try and project the cost, but.
We're looking at, you're looking at, I don't want to have Al to say the number, but it's going to be similar to a new water treatment plant, $15 million.
Yes.
I mean, it's the new higher quality water standards for discharge. I think it's compounded by the fact that we're discharging into the Great Bay. Maybe the Great Bay Estuary Commission, I can't remember what the name is, the one that's looking at a regional system, will pan out, but probably not in that time frame, because there's going to be, whatever idea they come up with is going to have a lot of political opposition.
So when I hear people talk about sewer upgrades, that's the big part. It's not so much. See, I was kind of thinking, well, we got these 19th century pipes underneath our streets or something. It's not really our.
This is the
pipes.
plant.
The plant.
itself.
Okay.
The treatment, because I think it's going to require tertiary treatment.
It very well could be. By that time, the laws, the rules, the regulations, the treatment, it's changing so fast. So it is very difficult to project a figure in 2000, 12, not knowing what those perimeters
Sure.
will be. But yeah, clearly it's going to be up in the 15, 20 million probably if we go with a new plant and tertiary treatment.
Right now, we have primary, which is basically you get the big stuff out, and then secondary, which is the bacteria bubbling away.
Okay.
And that lowers the biological demand, and which is what sucks the oxygen out of the water.
Now, I've read in the papers, and again, if this is just very quickly, if it's off, it doesn't apply to us. But isn't there a regional system that's being considered? Is that going to impact us? Or are we out of that?
No,
We're definitely in it. I mean, we're not. We're in the area that it might serve, and maybe
Might
one of the state reps can update us, because that's a
Okay.
process that I know Senator Maggie Hassan has been directly involved.
Would that implicate the cost to us then, if that, depending on how it went, or?
Well, there's some of the ideas are one central plant, like they have for the Lakes region, which, if you can imagine with how many people it would serve, it would have to be a pretty big plant.
Okay.
And what town's going to want to host that? Where is it going to be? Other ideas include a discharge pipe out into the ocean, like the one in Boston. So those are broad kind of ideas, and but the cost of that, you're talking hundreds of millions of dollars. So it's going to have to come from somewhere. So
So we're not going to skate out? in
we're not
other
going
words.
to, I mean, if that idea came up, maybe it'd be less, but who knows, it might be more.
Okay.
But Dennis, would you like to, Representative Abbott? Come up to the mic over here, please.
Thank you. And I'd like to thank Kathy Murphy for inviting the state representatives to this meeting this evening. I was hoping I'd have a chance to say something after putting a necktie on coming down here. Two things that I'd like to comment on. I'll comment Paul's question about the sewer treatment system that's being discussed. As you know, there's a study going on. We just had an informal meeting with Senator Hassan a couple of weeks ago and talked about things, the activity that's going on. And the most important thing that I heard that's going forward is there will not even be a report issued until probably the end of next year. They're down to four methods of handling, proposals for handling sewerage. One of the ones that's most not popular, but you hear the most about, is the large pipe. I personally am against that, and I will not support that. I think it's environmentally unfriendly in the ocean. I think there's a lot of things that it would do to the aquatic life out there. It would have probably bad effects on the fishermen in the seacoast. There's not a whole lot good about it, other than it gets rid of what we want to get rid of. So I don't know where that will go, but it's a long time. And it was interesting to hear that there's 44 communities that are involved in this study. I think that more than half of them don't even have a sewer treatment plant. And then of the towns that do, I mean, just picture Newmarket alone, you're only serving the core of the town. Probably a great percentage of the residents aren't involved anyway. So we have probably a greater problem brewing. I also serve on the Resources and Recreation Committee, and we deal with water and sewer issues and all of these things. But probably a greater problem that's brewing is what to do with septage waste. You know, we're generating more septage and places don't take it. And I think Representative Moody might remember discussions we had, but a good percentage from this part of the state ends up crossing state lines and going to, I think, Lowell or Lawrence. They have a large treatment plant there, which is where a lot of our septage is going. So as we see the garbage coming into New Hampshire, we're sending our septage there. So you won't see a lot regarding the big pipe. And when you do, there will be tremendous amounts of opposition, I suppose, to it. And we'll see how that all plays out. I mean, there's a process going on, and everything is being looked at fairly, and the outcome might be that, but I don't know. And then there would also be a federal process of permitting, which would be very extensive, too. So it's unlikely I'd probably see it in my lifetime. The second issue that I'd like to talk about, that you've already talked about, is the water issues. As I said, I'm on the Resources Committee, and we deal with water issues, and we've been hearing for the past 2 years, USA Springs has been the popular thing about they're taking water. We discovered that there's another bottling plant over in Epping that takes an equal amount of water every day. And I don't think anybody knows it, but it's only 1% of the water that goes to these bottling places. But I think it's incumbent and important that you counselors make that your top priority, or one of your very top priorities is finding water, and finding water soon. In an earlier life, I was a water commissioner back in the early 80s to the mid 80s when we were meeting at the sewer treatment plant, and we were doing fracture trace analysis, and we determined that the most likely spot is, I believe, the spot that you're looking for beyond my place. But DES advises us, go find water in the ground. Don't look for surface water. Don't look for treating water, because your production costs are low. You may have transmission line costs, but you'll have a dependable source of water. There's also a long permitting process regarding water. So you got to get, on top of this and get something going, because it's years down the line, even if we start now. And you really have started. I know that there's been activity there. But as you probably read, I think I read a newspaper article just today that said that water issues in the seacoast are critical. Somebody wrote a report and said water issues are becoming more critical, what with the rising population and the demands on water. And a lot of people want water. And recently in the legislature, we finally declared, we passed a bill through our committee that we've declared that groundwater is held in a public trust, which is something that wasn't clearly defined before. So though we have surface water that we have a feeling that it belongs to each and every one of us, we're trying to establish that the water under the ground belongs to each and every resident too, and because we have to protect people from taking the water that the constituency needs, the general population needs. So my message, I guess, is find some water as soon as you can. Thank you. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions for Representative Abbott? I'd offer the opportunity for Representative Gilbert or Moody to speak as well, if you have anything to add. Does anybody, any additional questions or conversation about the capital projects? I think we all are aware of the school's pressing needs and know that you're doing the hard work to figure out how to get there. So opening up to the remaining items, I'll let Councilor Glennon, since you had a comment about item number 10, start with that. And why don't we just focus on ones related to the communication on this list and then go on to the next set. So that would be, in my opinion, the Channel 13, number 9 on the list, which is communication and information exchange, and maybe there's nothing to discuss there, but, and then also the network, which I think is the fiber optic network. Yeah. Go ahead, Councilor Glennon.
Thank you. Going back to question number 10, status of Channel 13, how would you propose we look at that as or what specifically are you looking for? Dollars amount to what it would cost staff-wise?
Well, I think that the board has talked, and certainly the school administrators have talked about a collaborative effort between both the school and the town. We both share the use of Channel 13, right. And unfortunately, there is not a budget specific either in your town budget or in the school budget that supports Channel 13. So I made a comment, it's running on a shoestring. I'm not even sure it's a shoestring, but right. It's an absolutely excellent vehicle. I mean, there isn't a time when you don't hear people in the community talking about, I saw the meeting on TV, I heard the information, I saw the slides that announced a certain information. I mean, we're using it now to announce delayed openings and no school and all sorts of information. So Mr. Dixon and I have had conversation about the fact that we I think it should be a joint effort between the school and the town to fund that TV station, and there ought to be a commission. Most towns have a cable committee that oversees the TV and the use and all the appropriateness of it, and has a budget, and I would like that to be considered by the town.
I would concur with that, because that was one of my thoughts, was some type of cable entity that would overlook and work with the, what's his name, Al? Work with
Doug
Doug.
Poulin.
Yeah, Doug Poulin, to set that up, because absolutely, that's the medium that people are going to
Right.
look, because, I mean, I see a lot of space in there that nothing's happening.
Right.
But it
But
could
we've
be
been doing
utilized.
things, I don't know if you noticed, but we had the high school graduation
Yes.
on. We've had student readers on there. We've had staff, teachers, and administrators at various times during the year read, because reading is so important, and our literacy initiative is important. We can use Channel 13 as a vehicle for that goal of improving literacy across the district. So I just thought this was a wonderful chance to discuss that and let you know how important that is. But I think your constituents tell you that too, so.
Yes, I hear it on a regular basis. The other one that I have here is also number 9, communication and information exchange.
So do I assume, Mr. Glennon, then that's a commitment from you?
Yes, I'm committed to it, yes. I don't know about the rest of the council, and I'm not sure. And the other part of that question, too, was, are we looking at a 50-50 split for budgeting purposes?
Well, our initial, some discussions that Al and I had is that we felt we could do a 50-50 split and take about $10,000 to get us started to pay some staff. We have a member of our staff that we feel we can cut away about 10 hours, and certainly Doug can do the other 10 or whoever. And we would be able to support the station with an initial budget of around $10,000.
And who would we rely on, I'm assuming we would probably, on Doug to do the actual design work?
I don't know that. I do have someone on our staff that's able to do that too, so.
That could be a shared
We
responsibility.
could share that responsibility. We could really set it up in any way. I know that Doug has other responsibilities too, like our person, so.
Before we go on to the
support
second part, I just wanted to, I think I was on the council when this was first brought up. Chris was too, and Jerry was, I believe. And I think the first vote was no to establish the TV.
That's correct.
Because the funding amount was a little higher. And then we got new estimates that indicated the amount of money we got from the cable company in the initial contract would cover the installation of the equipment. So we did that because we didn't need to go to the voters because we had the funding. It only could be used for that purpose. And I just wanted to share that during those discussions, the council made it very clear they did not want to have staff run it because of the cost factor for that. And but I also think that, as you've pointed out, and as I've heard, and all of us have probably heard, I saw you on TV last night. So there's been a lot more. I think the impact has been greater than people anticipated. I also think that the amount of people participating via the TV has been higher. So it might warrant the council and the school board putting forward a joint proposal.
We
for
also have an
consideration.
excellent opportunity because we're going to be, I understand that the town will be renegotiating a contract with Comcast. And to me, this is a wonderful opportunity to be able to access some of their support via that negotiations. Mr. Dixon has indicated that he would like me to participate in those negotiations along with representatives from the town. So I would very much like to have a seat there.
I have 3 suggestions.
Sure.
Number one, the school facilities committee is very shortly going to send out a survey relating to school facilities, and maybe we can consider adding a question to it. Do you receive information from the television on town affairs? And just, it's a quick question to ask, and yes or no. And we can get a handle on how many people out there are actually watching. And that might be some interesting information for all of us. Number 2 is, I'm now sitting here wondering whether we have any policies at all for the use of the television, or whether it's just something that we're kind of doing. I don't know I don't think we do. I don't know if you guys do.
We have some loose guidelines right now, but
Right.
basically, it's strictly for public information, educational purposes that we're using it for. and
But community groups can say, we're having a picnic or a fundraiser and such, and if they're a nonprofit group in the
If they
community-
call us and it's appropriate, we accommodate
Sure,
that.
but there's no guideline for
Whatever
that.
policy.
The other thing is that it seems to me that the time is now ripe then for the formation of a committee, of a joint committee with school board and town council and planning board, whoever else uses the TV, and some community members. I'm sure there's some people out there with some experience in communications. So we can develop some guidelines and think about where we're going to go with this thing, because I think we all agree it's a great resource.
And one of the things that we'd like to see as well is, not necessarily making this part of the curriculum, but making this something that we can offer to the students to learn about as well. So, it has, many facets to this,
Splitting time between a school employee and a town employee makes a lot of sense, because we already pay the school employee, you already pay the town employee, and we don't have to worry about working out those kinds of details.
Okay.
So I think we'll take up at a meeting in the near future.
I would assume there's also
Committee.
grant monies available, probably for the educational portion of that. I'm not sure.
Well,
Like everything else, they're
Boy.
drying up, but
they're drying up faster than the water in town, I think. But we've not seen anything right now.
Okay.
The one place, obviously, is E-rate money that the school district gets for communication, and so we have some liberties there in how we use that grant money.
So we-
So, we have that available, but in terms of another grant, another source,
Okay.
it's very limited.
Well, we
So
can
I
just,
think I'm sorry, Brian, so what we'll do in the near future is take up in one of our agendas some broad guidelines, I think, for the creation of a committee and a charge for it. And if you guys do the same, we'll meet somewhere in the middle. I don't know if the planning board or ZBA or who else, Conservation Commission, I don't know who else uses it. But they should probably be participating as well, and see if JT wants to do it or can do it. And we'll go from there.
why don't we have the school board prepare some ideas and then share them with us, and then we'll respond to those versus two groups coming up with
Happy to do your
ideas.
work for you, Brian.
That's what I was hoping for. Thank you. Okay. Counselor Lennon, I think you had one to go.
Yeah, just one other question. Can you explain number 9, communication information exchange between SAU, Town Administrator, Code Enforcement, and Public Works Department? Are you suggesting something there, or looking for something?
You want me to, you go ahead.
Do you want to?
Go ahead.
I think the point was just to improve, continue to improve upon communications between the different groups. For example, during the floods, there was a meeting, town council, the different groups, but the school wasn't part of that meeting, and and we should have been. The superintendent should have been part of that meeting. So we just want to make sure that that there's a
Point
cohesive.
well taken on
yeah.
that one, yeah. Okay.
We're here.
Yeah, we're here
We-
to serve.
We did get, and I think it's important to say, and I think everyone on this side of the table would agree, we got fantastic yeoman-like service from Public Works during that flooding. They did a tremendous job helping us get back on our feet, repairing the parking lot and repairing the access over to Landrock Field, and basically making the streets clear for school buses to run. So I don't want to let that pass without sending out a thank you to everybody in Public Works Department about that. It's our first chance to, not our first chance, but I want to say it again, we've said it in other meetings. And that's why also going back to phase 2, why that's so critical to us, because we have school buses and children traveling through, and we just want to know what's going on so we can take appropriate steps to make sure kids are being transported around without interfering with the work in any way.
I'm all set, Mr. Chair, thank you.
Mike?
Just comments on the items that we're talking about.
All right, well, I just want, since there's one more related to communication, I thought, Al, you could update us on the fiber optic network status?
Fiber optics are pretty well in place. White Mountain has been working on that. I'll be getting a further update from the staff here in the next 2 weeks. But it's pretty well done. White Mountain has completed their work pretty much, and the installations are coming together.
What's the time frame for, well, once the system's linked between all the buildings, what other work has to be done?
That I don't know. I haven't had an update, a chance to sit down and have that update from the staff.
Doug and
Yeah.
Melody, okay. Mr. LeBranch, Councilor LeBranch.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on number 10, Channel 13, as
Sure.
Dana stated. And I think that Linda has a great idea, is trying to tie it into the curriculum somehow.
Right.
Going on to colleges now, communication is becoming a big field, real big field. So it's something that you might be able to tie the students in with and get a lot of free video, really, free time on the station.
Yeah.
We wanted to be able to train the students in using the studio and using the
Right.
camera equipment, and that's
You know, are we
lifelong
restricted
skills
being
for
able to
them.
do that? No, I mean, it's our station, right?
We just have to build the curriculum around it.
Right, and that may open the door to some further granting, grant monies.
Yeah. And the only other thing I had a question, moving to item 7, land acquisition. Is there any land acquisition possibilities at this point for the school, or
Yes,
there is?
yes,
1, 2, 3?
yes.
Thanks.
No, we have, we got a recommendation, the facilities committee made a recommendation last night. And the superintendent has been in negotiations, discussions with some people. And it's a little bit hard to say 1, 2, or 3, because in some instances, you're talking about, you have to talk to several people to put together one parcel. So there's one serious possibility under discussion that's been recommended, and there are some other things that are under investigation and further discussion. But we're trying to make it, we're going to have a public presentation in August from the facilities committee, and we're going to try to give the superintendent some direction on that in the near future, so that we can get that process rolling much earlier than we were able to last year for a number of reasons. So we can start the public discussion earlier and hopefully get some productivity out of it, because they're not making more of the stuff. So,
Does that help?
but we will, as stuff develops, we will keep, we have non-publics, and I've had non-publics with the council in the past on these issues, and I'm happy to do it again as the situation merits. Right now, it's just a little bit preliminary.
We are expecting soon, though, I think as early as August, right, Chris, that the Facilities Committee is going to report back to the school board
Correct.
publicly, specifically about the sites that we're talking about, so we don't have to speak, discreetly and not name them. I mean, they will be named and soon.
I don't want to
And-
shock
and-
anybody, but.
Right. Well, in any event, I just wanted to be clear about that communication, as Chris was saying, is a big priority for the facility committee and the school board. So we're not going to be pussyfooting around it. We're going to be talking about specific sites side by side, head to head.
Councilor Possible?
When a cable access Channel 13 committee is set up, as well as somebody from the council and somebody from the school board, I would also like to see a student involved in that committee as well.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Get one right there.
Any other? Okay. So it looks like from looking at the list that the school board provided to us, we've hit the capital improvements, which included number 2. We haven't got an update on the power utility project. So maybe the town minister, would you be able to update us a little bit about the status of that work?
They're looking at a feasibility study right now with a consultant. That's a contract that's approximately $4,700, I believe, at this point. The power, or the article that approved the small power demonstration project, as I would call it or refer to, is going to be going into the wastewater treatment plant. That will hopefully provide some data as to the economies, the effectiveness, the returns feasibility of doing this on a larger scale. So at this point in time, I would say that throughout the winter here, by next spring, we should have a system up and running at our wastewater treatment plant, and start having some real data assembled as to the economics of it.
And so we should not anticipate another proposal this coming May. And that the data would not be available until May.
Yeah, I wouldn't think so. Namely, I think, it's my opinion that the large ticket items that we're going to be talking several million, it's going to take a while to I guess, present that to the people and to get them to put their arms around a several $1 million bond.
Right.
Even though we say it's going to be paid off, I think we got to have the data. We got to.
I agree. I just wanted to confirm that that's what your thinking was too.
I think those, just to intervene here, I think that is a critical issue for the school district. In both the cases, at the elementary school, we have 2 boilers, which is recommended for any school building. And one of them has been cantankerous. It's almost 20 years old, both of them. So we know that down the road, we're going to need to replace boilers. Should this utility system work and be feasible, that would be a wonderful opportunity for the school district, instead of putting in the traditional boiler system, which is very expensive given the
Oil-fired.
oil and all that. Along with a high school where there's only one boiler we rely on, that's a big boiler that's not as efficient, although it's only 10 years old. The recommendation from the Department of Ed, the person that's in charge of construction of facilities, has recommended that we have a second boiler as a backup. So this project, and Bob Coffey has been meeting with me periodically. I've been trying to keep the board informed. It's really important we get that data, because they're going to need to be able to make some decisions down the road on the boilers. So that's actually good news to hear from our perspective.
Councilor Glennon?
The question is actually for the town administrator. Now, where are we, who's on this sort of ad hoc committee? I know Clay Mitchell's left.
He still has a presence on the committee as a citizen. Bob Coffey has been working in consultation with the group. Mel Hodgson, Doug. There's representation from the school. So.
Okay. So there is a committee that has been
There
formed,
is.
because I understood before that there was sort of like an ad hoc committee that was just doing preliminary work and was going to bring it to us, and then there would be a committee formed and
Well,
take charge.
I think the committee that they were talking about was ultimately a utilities committee.
Right.
And that's a little premature at this
Well,
point.
no. I understood that it was going to be somebody to head up this particular type project, but it seems like what you've already done, which I don't have a problem with, is taking those who had previously worked on it and formed it into a committee. Is that
Well, they
suffice
were a
to say?
committee. They were a
They-
committee,
okay.
administrative committee, yes.
All right, thank you. Who's on there from the school?
Linda Montagani and James Tremblay, our Director of Technology.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions about the utility project at this point? Okay, just going down the list, property value regarding the formal use for school aid.
Yeah, a
Not
couple
quite
of these
sure.
things are things that Chet put on here,
Okay.
and I'm not sure exactly what he had in mind. I think he's expressing frustration with the fact that the town is currently eligible for 30% state aid, and I think he's looking to rally support to change the formula. I think that's in general, but I don't know specifically what he had in mind.
Well, maybe he knew our state reps would, or people would be here to talk about it, maybe.
Right.
A little bit.
But I don't know, I can speak to it meaningfully with what he had in mind. He certainly is frustrated by the fact that we're only eligible for 30% state aid, and would like to see the formula changed in such a way that we get more state aid, which is evaluated by the state every year. In October 15th, they release the results of their analysis.
It's like a lottery. It's kind of.
Yeah, it's a formula based on what?
It's a formula based on the equalized evaluation of the community, the income of the community and the enrollment.
Right.
They take that and they weight it all. Susan, did I forget anything?
No, sorry.
And they have a weighted formula, and they arrive at it. And I think that Mr. Jablonski's frustrations lie in the fact that Exeter, I'm going to use Exeter as an example, is eligible for 55% reimbursement for their building aid. And Newmarket, are trying to sustain itself, is only eligible this past year, as you know, 30%. And that's a significant difference when you're trying to sell. That's 25% more money from the state.
And the reason is because you get an additional 5% state aid for every additional town that is
Right.
part of your school district. So there are
Up to
5.
15%, so they get
Yeah.
40.
They get 40, and then they have 5 additional towns. So that's why they get, regional school districts get an advantage in that way. They also build larger, more expensive facilities.
He would like the school district, and members of the board and the community to be more active in Concord to plead our cause for increase in availability of state funding for school buildings. We have some serious issues at our high school, and as you tour across the state, and Chet, because he was a member of the Seacoast School of Technology Board of Directors, he had an opportunity to tour a number of high school buildings across the state, and he saw what those that have and those that have not, and he was upset. And he feels very strongly that Newmarket is in a no-win situation regarding that, because of the expenses of building, the lack of state aid, that the opportunities for a decent facility for our students are limited because of the money that we get. So I don't know if I expressed Chet's frustrations. I've certainly heard them, and we were hoping maybe representatives might comment on it if they would.
Dennis Abbott had his hand up, and then we'll let Representative Gilbert too.
James need me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The superintendent and I have had this discussion some months ago. I don't know if the discrepancy is as wide as it is. It could very well be 30% to 55%. It was my understanding that the cooperative school districts surely get more money. And I think I told the superintendent at that time, I would have to look into the legislation, how it was arrived at, and see where it came from before you look at trying to change it. I mean, obviously, we'd like to get more money, but we also have to understand how they arrived at what they have now. And that, I did promise the superintendent that I would do that, assuming I go back to Concord for another term in the fall. So we will be looking at that, and we do believe that it's unfair. It's very surprising to a lot of residents, I'm sure, to find out that Newmarket is considered in such a high economic strata. I mean, I think I always considered Newmarket to be economically a poorer town. I've always preached that in Concord, that we're a wonderful little poor town over at the seacoast. But the figures, apparently, with all the residents moving in, mustn't bear that out.
It would seem, I mean, that there's some logic, and from the state's perspective, of wanting regional school districts and giving advantages to that.
Yep.
But I know the school board has had discussions with, if not all of the possibilities, most of them, and it would seem that that formula, maybe you could build support to change the formula if you attempt and are denied the opportunity by adjacent towns to join their school district or form one. You shouldn't be penalized.
That's correct.
That'd be great
And
if it could be
it
done.
also seems as though, in the interest of equity, that no one should get more than someone else. You know, everyone should be treated equally. All communities should be treated equally. You think on just base thinking, why should someone get more than another for the same purpose? It doesn't pass a common sense test, does it?
Mr. Abbott, I just wanted to comment very briefly.
Sure.
You mentioned, as you consider this policy of how the state distributes aid for building of schools, an important dimension to it is the history of it, how it developed over time. And I just put this out there for your consideration. When the director of the school building aid, Mr. Murdo, came to examine and go through our high school a couple of months ago, his assistant provided me some perspective on that, a very experienced individual in this area. And according to him, and I haven't studied the legislative history myself to get a perspective, but this is from him. And again, he struck me as a very experienced person who's been around a lot. This development of favoring cooperative school districts does in fact have a history of a time when the state deliberately was encouraging various discrete towns. Apparently in the history of New Hampshire, there were a lot of individual school districts, and they went through a period of consolidation. This is 20, 30 years ago, something like that. And that momentum or inertia has continued to this day. And the reason I mention it is this individual, the assistant to Mr. Murdo, was speculating or questioning whether that same incentive was still present today. So I just put that out there for your consideration. I absolutely agree the history of this is very important.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. I'm sure there's an encouragement to cooperative school districts, having lived in Newmarket all my life and remember following the basketball teams in earlier days. High schools that Newmarket played no longer exist, like Vilas is one that comes to mind. There's a number of small schools that existed in New Hampshire that no longer exist, and now they're Fall Mountain or whatever they may be. So that's probably that part of the school funding. You weren't addressing the actual funding that we're receiving in general today, were you?
I was referring to the difference
school-
in
the school
the discrepancy between the cooperative districts like Exeter and what we're receiving. And I think a very appropriate question in Concord would be, is this still something that we want to encourage? I mean, or should the policy still be encouraging this in light of the history? 30 years ago, yes. Today, I don't know. And I mean, we would say, gee, we need to look at that.
Certainly,
That's true, and there's probably political answers to that, too, as you create more school districts, cooperative school districts, they develop a larger voting block, don't they?
Right.
So it perpetuates itself
Right.
over a period of time as this becomes a more prevalent way of doing school systems. They would surely not like to see anything done to reduce their amount of aid, would they? It's the same with, the general aid that we get to the school right
But the
now.
difficulty is that the political forces are moving contrary to the trend in the industry, if you will, because prior to Columbine, you saw mega high schools, 3,000 students, 4,000 students. After Columbine, that's all done.
It's done.
No one's doing that anymore. And the tendency, the trend is back towards building smaller schools, smaller units, so that you don't have kids who get lost in the system. And if you look at even large high schools, you look at Noble High School in Maine, it's 1,200 students, but it's really a series. It's 850 student structures within the system. So there's a tension developing there that it's going to play itself out over the next period of time. But to get back to Chet's concern, I think that to make it triply irritating to us, the fact of the matter is that when the cutoff line between 30 and 40% was drawn, we were the last school. We were on the line. And another 10 students, I don't know, in another direction would have put us on the other side of the line.
You need a sharper pencil.
That point has not gone unnoticed.
To your earlier comments, you talked about the political and the industry going in different directions or not going in the same direction. I think that's always the case. And it's funny that you should, talk about the desire to have smaller schools. Now, you have to admit yourself, as you were exploring a new high school, you looked into a cooperative district. You explored the possibilities of including other towns, and you did that probably based on economics, for a lot of reasons. And that's what there's always reasons for everyone's.
Well, we did
actions.
it for economic reasons, but we did it. Economic reasons are closely related to program reasons for us. So if you have more resources, you can offer more program. So we offer the best program we can afford to offer. But if we had a bigger pool from which to draw, we could do more. We could offer additional program to our
There
students.
would be pluses and minuses.
So so you get pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
So that's why you know, we proposed a combined middle school, high school facility because as Cliff said, since we're not a cooperative district, that's really our only opportunity to take advantage of economies of scale. If we were a cooperative district, we could take advantage of that. You'd have a bigger pool of resources from which to draw, and you could enlarge and simplify and achieve economies in your purchasing and get more bang for your buck. But that's really, and I think it's a darn good reason, and Cliff explains it very well, that in Newmarket being a single town district, having made that choice, having a combined facility gives us that opportunity to have one set of foreign language teachers and one library and one auditorium and one cafeteria and whatever else, one gymnasium. So it allows us to achieve some savings in that respect and still maintain the atmosphere that the town has decided it wants to maintain in its school system. But we went out and looked at cooperative school looked at other towns because A, it gives us an opportunity for more program maybe, and B, we needed to do it seriously because people expected us to go out there and turn over every rock, and that's what have been trying for 3 years to do. So.
Could I make a couple more comments while I'm here?
Yes,
regarding
please,
this?
go ahead. And then Representative Gilbert.
Okay, thank you. I just want to comment on the chairman's comment regarding acquisition of land. I hope that as you go through this process, you keep it as much under the radar as you can. And I was happy to hear that you have a 5-year plan on acquiring land. Hopefully it won't take you that long. But I think to make this more palatable to the populace of Newmarket, if it's done in a way that was, as opposed to how it was done when everyone found out as prior, just about to going into voting booths, that we were looking at buying the golf course. I think it was too much of a shock to a lot of people in town. That's just a comment. Also, Paul mentioned school funding. I thought maybe it'd be appropriate if I make some small comment about school funding. As you know, the legislature wrestles with school funding yearly, and as you probably know, there's a lawsuit pending. It's been heard before the Supreme Court, and it's likely that there'll be a decision which will drive the legislature back to trying to work out more details about educational funding, of which I see the smirks around the table, and I could do the same thing because I think it will be another exercise in close to futility, because the will of the legislature is not to do anything regarding appropriately funding funding education in the state of New Hampshire. That's my belief. No other town wants to pay for another town's education, even though the Constitution states that we will equally support education for all citizens of the state. So I expect also, excuse me, also in the next legislative session that we will be grappling with education funding again. And I will promise you no results, because it's just like deja vu all over again.
Well, Dennis, for all practical intents and purposes, we've given up expecting anything out of that process, and it plays no role in our planning.
And I think that that's how you should proceed. I know that you probably, I came before the school board some months ago and told you how I voted on the last proposal that's before the Supreme Court. I voted it because it was voted for it at the last minute because it was the only alternative, and you just can't continue to vote no, no, no.
Yeah.
You know, at some point you have to support something.
You had hair when you went up to Concord, didn't
Excuse
you?
me?
You had hair when you went up to Concord, didn't you?
I haven't had hair in a long time, but what I have now doesn't show a whole lot. But it's a frustrating thing for all of us to deal with education funding. But we understand the problems of the town, and I know that all three of us do our best to represent Newmarket to the best of our abilities. So anytime you folks need anything, feel free to call on us.
You have a question for Councilor Glennon has a question for you, Representative Abbott.
Yes, well, it's not so much a question as it is more of a statement.
Sure.
Is that it is disturbing to me as a citizen of this state to hear the comment that the legislature doesn't want to grapple with the issue of school funding.
Say that again?
It's disturbing to me as a citizen of New Hampshire to hear from you, not saying that you're the cause of it, but hearing from you that our legislatures, people do not want to deal with school funding issue, and that you can almost promise that the next session around, it'll be a dead issue again. I find that disturbing.
Well, you may find that disturbing, but you don't understand the magnitude of the situation or the depth of the problem, really. Everyone from every community in the state of New Hampshire has a different outlook on how education should be funded. Therein lies the problem.
Right, no, I agree. No, I'm not criticizing you per se. I'm saying legislative people who are having that train of thought.
Well,
You know?
they deal, I maybe didn't phrase it correctly that they don't want to grapple with it. The legislature deals with everything that comes before them, everything that they're required to do. It's the outcome that we don't like. And the outcome is determined by counting the votes at the end of the day.
Thank you.
That is the final solution. And right now, the votes are not there to provide equitable funding for education in the state of New Hampshire. The state of New Hampshire is very frugal. They take in a certain amount of money and they determine how they're going to spend that money. And they don't raise any more money and they don't spend any more money than they raise. They don't go off every term or every legislative session and raising people's taxes. They fudge it around and they pass it off to the counties in a lot of cases, which falls back on the local property taxpayer. So, and there's a lot of things that go on like that. But the state, as you understand, is very frugal, and that's why a lot of people choose to live in the state of New Hampshire, because that's the way they like it.
Representative Gilbert, thank you for your patience.
She had a question to ask you?
Oh, sure.
I want to know what happens with all this lottery money that's supposed to go to education. I cannot get an answer.
Okay, Ethel asked what happens with all the lottery money that goes to education, and
Thank you, Mrs.
Representative
McAfee.
Abbott has walked back to
That
answer.
is something that just had me run back up here.
Go ahead.
We feel it's a lot of money that comes through the lottery system. I remember hearing many years ago in the legislature that if we took all the money that's been collected by the state to support education through the state lottery, for 30-some years, we put all that money in this year into state aid to education, New Hampshire would still rank last in the union in support for state aid to education, because the amount of money raised, the school budgets collectively are what, in the billions of dollars at this point. The amount of money that we raise through the lottery is minuscule. It only amounts to, I don't know the figure, 50 million? And that's that's not a lot of money when you're talking about the amount of money that's spent on education. But remember that, all the lottery
30 years of
money that goes to education, went to education through all the years, if we put it all in this year's budget, we would still be last of all 50 states in state aid to support education.
I think 50 million is probably Hampton's combined school and town budget.
Probably, yeah.
Their town budget's like 26 million, so
Mhm.
probably something in that range.
You don't get much out of it, short-change. Well, again, I want to thank the superintendent.
Buy
for-
more
for-
lottery tickets.
all the time.
Yeah,
I want to
lots
thank the
more.
superintendent for asking us to come down tonight. I think this is great that we get together. And, but talking about what Dennis was just mentioning about the education and why we aren't getting it settled up there. Unfortunately, politics have a lot to do with it. They do. And I hate to be considered a politician, but when you're up there, you have to be a politician. And as long as certain parties vote one way and they're very strict voting their way, this other party strict voting their way, nothing gets done. And it's been that way for years and years and years. And until the House gets off their pedestals of having to support their own, Republican and Democrat, their own issues, it'll never get resolved.
Territorial.
Territorial, very, very much so, unfortunately. Maybe that decision should be left to somebody other than the House of Representatives. There's 400 of us up there, 20 committees, 20 of us or so are on each committee. I serve on a criminal justice committee, dealing with your juvenile justice, your sexual offenders, and all your other criminal activities, so I'm not much into the education issue until it comes to the floor when we discuss it and so forth. But those issues are usually decided way before it comes to the floor, how they're going to vote on it. But on the other issue of your school and your cooperative district, history has a great deal to play in it, a great deal to play in it. Fortunately, I've been around to be part of the history. I've been here probably too long. But I served 6 years on that side of the table and 13 years on this side of the table. I was there when we built the elementary school. I was there when we built the gymnasium for the high school. I've been there through many, many budgets and many negotiations and so forth, so I know what you're both dealing with. 1974, when I started, we had a cooperative school district. And that was my first introduction to the House of Representatives. I was the school board's appointee to go up there and battle with the House Committee on Education to form our own SAU because of the expense. And believe me, it is very expensive to have your own SAU. Much more expensive than you would ever think when you come to, if you want to go become another district and bring other schools in. The town was on our case unbelievable for many, many years to get out of that district. It was Newmarket, Fremont, Chester, Epping, and Sandown. We were the largest of all of them. Therefore, the cost of the superintendent, the largest cost of the superintendent's office and their support staff and everything that goes with the superintendency, because it was so big of a district, we bore the largest cost of it because it's borne by population, spread out by population. We hardly ever saw our superintendent or his assistant superintendent because they're over serving the smaller districts, smaller towns in that district. They're never here. And yet we're paying through the nose. And it took me 2 trips to Concord before we could get the Concord to allow us to be our own SAU. And the town thought that was wonderful. Our school expenditures went down noticeably. So please, I hope the school board would really look into that, research it, please. 74 on, you'll see what the costs were and what the reasons were we left the supervisor unit situation. What are some of the other issues you were discussing now? The cost of education up there. Chet, and he's been being my neighbor. I hear from him quite a bit. And he was confused or concerned, I say concerned more than anything else, over the Newmarket share, what they were getting back from the state. So I called the state and they sent me down a package like this. I gave it a Chet. Hopefully he's been sharing it with you, or he will shortly be.
We received that also.
Good.
Susan
But
does.
I went through that with this fellow on the phone for quite a while, and he said he'd highlight the reasons why Newmarket's where it's at and so on and so forth, and why there's no more money than there is. And hopefully you'll see those points in it as well. I spoke to the people at the Board of Education up there. One day they had a little meeting down to the State House. And why isn't Newmarket getting more for what they're asking for their new building? They said, well, for one thing, you're asking for more than you need. You have a student population of 600, 800, and you're looking at building a school of 11 or 1,200, what they said, what they saw. They say you're not going to get your 40% of that. You'll get 40% of what you need, not what you would like to have. So my suggestion was to be sure that your goals are within reach as far as the state's giving you any more money, because they're not going to give you any more money, only 40%. The formula's been there for years and years and years. And right, you came in almost over the line, but not quite. So unless we all get together, and I think this is important that you folks, the board, the council, and your state reps get together and stay together as to what your needs are. And if you have stumbling blocks, that's what we're here for. I won't be going back next year. But hopefully, I'll be back a few years after that. I got a few things to take care of first. So if you have any questions for me, well, you have any problems with criminal justice, sexual offenders or whatnot, give me a call.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I think we addressed the property value regarding the formula used for the school aid.
I'd only like to comment on
Okay,
the
sure, go ahead.
School aid. We were eligible for 40%, given the new formula that the state devises based on per capita income, based on equalized evaluation and student enrollment. They set that number at 30% last October. We would have been eligible for the 30% because our building met all of the guidelines relative to what a building should have
The 40%.
given an enrollment of 842 openings. So that's what we were anticipating. The state had not received our proposal at all. They had no idea what our proposal was, only that we were moving forward with a proposal. If, in fact, Newmarket's equalized evaluation, student enrollment, and per capita income change, then on October 15th, we will be eligible for 40%. So it's set every single year. It's not set based on your project. It's based on the numbers that they get. Now, of course, to get that 40%, we will need to build a building that meets the standards for a population of opening of 840 kids. So, of course, we would do that. That's what our building, the proposal that we did in the spring did, in fact, meet those guidelines. We had already submitted a preliminary proposal to the state, so we knew that we were well within the guidelines and that we had all of those things required by the state in order to meet that funding.
The other critical thing is that what the state does not want you to do is build a building for 750 kids and go back in 5 years and say, oops, we need another $10 million because we didn't build a building big enough. They want you to do your building so that you don't have to come back to them for at least 20 years. They want you to build it for the capacity that you expect to carry at least 20 years into the future, so that you're not coming back in 5-year shots or looking for more money. That's poor planning. So the core capacity of the building, the heating systems and the auditorium and the gymnasium and the library and spaces like that, you don't want to have to expand those spaces if you don't have to. But the classroom capacity of the building was going to be sufficient for 841 kids, which was still larger, strictly speaking, than we would need, but you'd have a period of time within which to organically grow into that space. Because regardless of what the demographic information tells you, as a matter of fact, we have been growing by 20, 30, 40 students every year, year in and year out. They're not coming in kindergarten necessarily and going out in 12th grade. They're popping up in 6th grade for the first time and 7th grade for the first time. It's very hard for us to predict, although we work very hard at trying to predict it. So everything we did in planning for the facility, I think, was conservative and right down the middle. We're already looking at cutting as much money as we can out of the proposal and finding every other way we can to save money. But it is based on your capacity and not on the particulars of your project.
Thank you for that clarification. The next number listed on the list is the amount of apartments in town and how we compare to other towns. I think that information can be provided based from the tax assessor if that's something you'd be interested in receiving outside of the meeting.
That's another Chet item.
Okay. It's roughly 55% of the town is rented.
Yep.
So
yep,
that's a good start. And that's way higher than most towns nearby.
Yep.
Which you probably needed to.
Just a comment, there's a belief that those folks don't pay their fair share. I think we heard that. You probably heard that at some of the deliberations. Can you comment on that?
I know that Clay Mitchell did an evaluation of, there's been significant studies done. Clay did a kind of one on his own, but there's been a study by the Housing and Finance Authority, and the biggest factor for the number of students in a residential unit is the number of bedrooms. So if you have a 3 or 4 bedroom house, you're guaranteed to have like 2 to 3 kids. If you have a 1 bedroom apartment, you're going to be on average like 0.2 kids per residential unit. So I also know that the Cherry Hill units were looked at particularly, and the school district provided data on the number of students that the school bus picked up, which was believed to be the most accurate representation of how to determine that. It was given without giving names of students. So all confidentiality was kept, and the ratio was consistent with those statewide studies. And it was showing that those units in particular were, in terms of education, more than covering their cost of services.
Honestly, we do not have a lot of students in our apartments.
The larger unit complexes don't contribute the volume of students that people
Not
believe.
at all.
And that's been true from, I came here almost 10 years ago now, and I looked at that, and it was true then, it's true now.
I wonder, and maybe this is something for Dennis and Carl and Marcia to consider, the extent to which our demographic information is skewed by the number of college students that we have. I mean, does anybody have a handle on the number of college students we have? And what does that do to our demographic information? I mean, they have virtually no income.
They are not included in the census.
They're not counted at all?
No. No. And nor can we include them when we, let's say, how I thought at one point it might be good, but
we can count them if they establish legal residence in town.
if they are emancipated.
Right, okay.
If not, then when you do an income survey to get project eligibility, if you're looking at that kind of thing based on need, then if they aren't emancipated, I don't care if they have a residential address or whatever, or taken up in voting rights and whatnot in your community, then you have to look at the parents' income, and that negates the whole thing.
I saw Councilor Plosky and then Councilor Glennon. Pass the mic to him.
Basically, as a landlord, I can say that yes, the renters are helping and paying their fair share. Because as a landlord, I'm going to charge my renters higher rent to cover my taxes. So therefore, they are paying indirectly through their landlord into the system.
I think the question, perhaps, I believe that particular question was brought up by Chester, I believe, at the time, and I've had the opportunity to speak with him on that. I believe what he's really looking at is that the master plan does state that the ratio between apartments and single-family homes is way out of proportion, and that's what he was concerned about, too. How do we look at that? How do we address that? And I'm not sure what the answer is to that, how we go about that, but I believe that's where he was coming from.
I think that the master plan right now and the planning, the development that's been occurring has been shifting that ratio. But the only way to shift it dramatically would be allow us to build 2,000 or 3,000 new residential units that were not apartments, because the ratio is already so far towards rental.
I have a theory on how to start. I think it's going to it would take a period of long time, but I think there's a good theory on how to start changing the ratio and reducing the number of rental units in town, which is to go through downtown redevelopment, which will increase the overall value of property in the downtown area. And the market may, over time, recognize that there's a higher and better use to properties in the downtown than serving as residential rental units. But we're talking about a period of a long time.
There's a lot of that happening already. It's slowed down because of the market change in the residential real estate, but there are several condensations happening in the New Village area, which is an area that traditionally has been owner-occupied rentals or investment rentals.
I'm talking about a period of decades,
Yeah.
really. And I think that's part of the underlying theory of doing the downtown renovation is unlocking value that's down there, and the market may recognize a higher value than the current uses in some of those properties. But that's not something over which any of us has direct control. But downtown renovation, it seems to me, is a good thing any way you cut it.
Go ahead, Representative Gilbert.
School board, maybe you might recall this. In '84, thereabouts, we spent several thousands of dollars, the school board did, and we did a demographic study. We had a company come in that did a real bang-up job in the entire town, the apartments and the whole 9 yards, and the student enrollment, projecting it down the road. And have you looked at that recently to see how we compare today to what we expected to be at
Yes,
20 years ago?
yes.
How do we fare, do you think?
The studies that were done were too conservative, and we ended up having more students than were projected.
Okay.
That's the reality.
And we continue to do a projection every year because of that. I mean, those numbers were low
Yeah.
on that particular study. Susan and I have both reviewed it.
Okay.
And so we continue to do that every year and upgrade and update that.
Just to know how
Yeah,
good
it
our
was
money was spent,
interesting.
if it was worthwhile. Appreciate that.
Every year, I think we've ended up having more students than we anticipated
Right.
having. And like I say, it's not, you can't just look at the birth rate, because people are moving in with 6th, 7th, 8th graders, and that's where we've been seeing the growth. I think 40 additional students from the year
The
before.
junior,
to
senior
the-
high school, that's right.
From 2005 to 2006, and they showed up in the junior, senior high school.
It might be interesting to ask the next person that does a study to look at the relative value of Newmarket residential units towards the neighboring towns, because our prices for the residential unit is less. You pay about the same amount of taxes as you would in Durham for the same house, but the house in Durham's worth more money.
Oh, gee, that sounds pretty complicated.
But I mean, what I mean is that I think that trend will probably continue, because families that are growing and buying their first house or having kids are going to move to Newmarket because we're more affordable than towns that have higher values for houses, especially with real estate at 8%. Mortgages 6-7% instead of 4 or 5%.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe real estate agents out there can help me, but I know discussions with Val Shelton about the real estate market. And I said, I don't really care if you pay the same amount of taxes. What's the difference? She's like, well, if you're paying the same amount of taxes for the same structure and it's worth more money in one town, then a higher proportion of your money is going towards your equity, and that's the difference.
Right.
But people who only have a certain amount of money are going to buy a cheaper house because that's what they can afford.
Right.
So I'm just thinking working families with kids are going to have a tendency to come here and continue to, relative to the real estate values in Newfields, where house lots are more valuable, in Durham, where they are too.
Right.
Probably too difficult to have that factored in, but
I mean, to do a real study, you're talking, it's pretty complex.
Yeah. Just
Seems to me.
curiosity.
But we do informally survey local real estate agents, and we try to keep a handle on what's going on, because we need to know.
Yeah, it's the single biggest factor
We
for
need to
your operating
know.
expense, but also for facility needs.
We try
Correct.
to evaluate the comings, but we also evaluate the goings, and we need to know why they leave, and that's important to us.
So we talk to real estate agents, we talk to local daycare providers, and we try to get a handle on what the flow is going to be, but it's very difficult. It's an art, not a science.
But as you have pointed
Yeah, I'm
out,
all
though,
set. Thank you.
over the past, 5-6 years, we have consistently been growing basically a full classroom size every year. So every year, we have a full classroom of kids, new kids coming to the school.
If the projections were 10 students, is it 20, or how far off are the projections? 1 or 2 students, or like 10 or 15?
Which projections? Were you talking about the ones
The
at
study.
Carl?
No, the most recent ones that you're relying on now.
Oh, they're
How-
pretty close now. The one, when we do it every year, we're giving them data from the planning office, number of new homes, the student enrollment, permits.
Okay.
So we provide them with all of that, and they use that in a formula. That's pretty close.
Okay, good.
We're about 10, maybe a dozen off, but that's it. But we were getting fooled because it was coming in at the higher grades. We expected more of the
The elementary, yeah.
young kids.
The sort
but
of
it was,
organic coming up
It was
through.
middle high school, which surprised us.
That's the number one reason why they're leaving.
What's the number one reason? The school is a book being judged by its cover. And there's people that are dissatisfied with the facility. And I think that I can state very proudly that the curriculum and offerings at the school are very competitive. As you know, with AP classes and virtual high school classes and all the programs that the school has put and provided for students. The issue is that people look at the school and they judge that the book by its cover, and the facility has been one of the areas that people have left.
We also feel, we don't just feel, we know that we could do more curriculum, offer more program with the staff that we have if we had the space in which to put them. So kids could get more educational opportunities within the context of our existing staffing. But we simply do not have the physical space in which to put them.
More questions on that? Any more comments or questions from the school board members about that? All right, the last one on the list is number 8, budget planning process.
I'm sorry, I just had a mental image of Al wandering the hallway with a cart with all of his stuff on it, instead of having an office to sit in.
Has he ever visited you at your office? Because it sometimes feels like that, but no.
We do have teachers who literally have all the materials on a cart, and they
Yep.
push their cart from place to place. Maybe you should try that, Al.
I never thought about a card. I just have a box.
That takes care of your storage problem. Use your office for storage.
So the next item is the budget planning process. The budget committee is meeting, I believe, Tuesday night to choose a chair and address the vacancies. Lisa was
Good.
proposed to be Tuesday night. I'm not sure if it's been confirmed. I haven't responded to the chair or to Leo, who's organizing it.
Are you aware of that?
Yes.
Yeah. Cliff is our budget committee rep.
And I'm the budget committee rep for the town council. So that would be that's the beginning of that process. Is there any particular thing that you think the town council and school board can work together on in terms of that process more efficiently?
I think just keeping each other aware of if you see
Maybe.
things that are developing in your process that are maybe different or out of the ordinary, that are just to keep us appraised and
This
we'll do
year,
the same.
the only other thing that's not on this list that is not a capital thing, but we do have ongoing union negotiations with the police union, and it's going to mediation this coming fall. So, I would hope that we'd be able to present a contract in May.
We have a contract negotiation this year also. Our budget process starts earlier than yours does because we have to do it in March.
Yep.
But we also have contract negotiations this year with our teachers, so.
Okay. So that's something that we'll try to
We
keep
have
you
other things,
abreast
but
of.
we haven't really gotten to the point of budget priorities.
Yeah, we haven't gotten there
It
yet.
seems like we do this every year,
What?
the budget process. You'd think we'd learn.
Well, we could pass a 2-year budget like the state does. That'd be kind of fun. We can't, but it'd be interesting if they allow that opportunity. Make it a little bit easier administratively. Well, I guess that's all the topics. Is there anything additional that people would like to bring up and discuss?
Just don't forget to talk about sending somebody to us, a sacrificial lamb for our, talk about the potential reuses of the high school. If you could make sure.
Al asked to add that to the upcoming agenda for Chairman Jarvis
We'll do
to
the same.
ensure. Councilor Plasky? Oh, okay.
Are we
Have a volunteer.
free to go?
Yes, I think you are. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank you.
proposing it and for coming tonight, and enjoy the rest of your evening. We'll take a brief recess and start again in 5 minutes. All right, so are we on the air? Okay. Okay, we're back to the Town Council Workshop, July 19th. Again, for those of you who just joined us, Chairman Jarvis is on vacation. We'll be back in time for the August business meeting. We just concluded the portion of the meeting with the school board and had a very productive discussion about their priorities, our priorities, and areas that we can work together on. So I thank them for proposing the idea and for coming together with so many ideas to discuss. I think we all felt like it was pretty productive. We're going to go back to the first agenda item, which is to consider nominations, appointments, and elections. The first one is the Zoning Board of Adjustment. We have an alternate position with a term expiring May 2007 open. We have one candidate, Peyton Carr. I'll open the floor for nominations.
I would like to nominate Peyton Carr
Okay.
for the ZBA position of alternate for 1 year.
Is there any other nominations?
Oh, you don't do seconds?
No. The rules don't require them, believe it or not, for the way we do the nominations. Okay, so seeing no other seconds, I'll close the floor to nominations, and I'd ask the town administrator to call the roll for Peyton Carr, alternate term expiring May 2007 for the Zoning Board of Adjustment.
Counselor Jerry Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Glennon.
I'm sorry, aye. I have water in my mouth.
Counselor LaGrange.
Aye.
Counselor Pulaski.
Aye.
Counselor Will Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Hart.
Aye.
Motion carries.
The second part is to consider nominations for the Downtown Business TIF Advisory Board, term expiring May 2009. We have one candidate, Jerry Landry. I'll open the floor for nominations.
I'll make that nomination for Jerry Landry for the downtown TIF and term expiring, what did you say, Mr.
May
Chair?
2009.
May 2009.
Is there any additional nominations? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the floor for nominations and ask the town administrator to please call the roll for Jerry Landry.
Brian,
Oh, yeah.
can I ask a question?
Yes, you may. Sorry.
Just looking at the application, registered voter, no? Is that a mistake, or?
He is not a resident. He's a business owner. He owns Regal Sleeving in the Mills. I asked the town administrator if he had to be a resident to be on the committee, and the answer was no. To be a business owner in the TIF.
Okay, thanks.
And he used to be on it when he was the employee of what was formerly Essex, Suffolk's? Suflex.
Yep.
So,
Okay.
that they bought it out.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I do have one. We perhaps might want to change the Channel 13 area because it does state you have to be a property owner.
Not for the TIF, I don't believe.
I believe it is for the TIF. I could be wrong out, but I'll go back and look, but I believe it does say you have to be a property owner for the TIF.
Well, that's
So it
incorrect.
should be changed.
It's incorrect.
Let's get that verified.
Certain
But we'll,
positions, okay, you know, we,
Within, certain positions, not within the
Well,
TIF.
yeah, well,
I'll go back and I'll
yeah,
look
we
at it and
have
I'll give you a
business
call.
owners, and the business owners do not have to be residents. You have a requirement that you have to have residents, you know, that's close, a resident that's close to the, or within the district, and things of that nature.
so he's applying for one that's not requiring a property owner.
Oh, I didn't know it was even broken down to that.
Well, let's proceed with him and the vote, and then if we're incorrect, we'll come back to it, instead of having to come back to it again. But I asked the same question at the beginning of the meeting. Okay, so we've closed the floor. Any more questions? Okay, please proceed with the roll call.
Counselor Jerry Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Glennon.
Aye.
Counselor LaBranch.
Aye.
Counselor Pulaski.
Aye.
Counselor Will Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Hart.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Okay, on to agenda item number 3, Town Council to consider reports from council rep committees. We don't have any written reports with us, but I'll open it up to each of you who are listed here to provide a brief report. And the first one is the Conservation Commission, Councilor Wilfred Hamel.
Conservation meeting Thursday, July 13th, 6:30, site walk, Haley Oaks Project 332 Waterley Falls Road. We resumed at 7:30 in council chambers. We had a presentation by Sean Moriarty from New Hampshire Soil Consultants pertaining to a minor wetland application concerning a 1,000 square feet, a crossing to create access on conservation property off New Road, which we found to be okay. Discussion on conservation of stewardship property. I read a letter from Frank Richardson to the commission stating that he was working on our prime wetland designation. Advised me that he wasn't dragging his feet. Also a letter from David Price, DES, stating conditions and corrections on Bay Road lumbering, they are in compliance. And that was about all that was pertinent. Thank you.
Do we have any questions for Councilor Hamel? Okay, I'll ask Councilor Glennon if you would like to provide a report from the downtown TIF.
It'll be very short and brief. We did not meet last month.
That's
That was
great.
what-
You get all the easy.
Councilor Jerry Hamel, is there any update from the Highway Public Safety Committee?
We did not meet either, so nothing.
All right. The NCDC had a very brief meeting this past week. It was the fastest meeting I've ever been to. It was 45 seconds long, and we decided to renew our insurance policy for the mills, of course. We did have I think we already reported, but we had a very successful tours of the mills, and we had a pretty good attendance at the session, and we'll be proceeding with the additional work of preparing a proposal for the mill redevelopment. Unfortunately, I missed the last board meeting of the NCDC, which was the day before I left for a trip, so I just couldn't make it, so I can't provide any additional update. That was the next one will be the first Monday of August, so I'll report to the board in August. Councilor Branch, is there a planning board update? I know you provided one in the mailbox today, so.
Yes.
Please go ahead.
I'll be brief. You've all got a copy of this. A lot of the things, basic information. There was one new alternate nominated and voted in, Peter Roy. The major event of that evening was the Haley Oaks subdivision up there. It basically did receive conditional approval. There's approximately 14 conditional approvals on the books for it. Key points are the impact fees is going to be $59,812 for the school, and $52.44 for recreation on impact fees. So it's a substantial amount going into the till. They gained 6 waivers, most of them minor. Key points also is that the nearest property boundary is going to be 370 feet from Fallis Brook. There was some concern about that. So the key point about that, and something that I basically learned at the last meeting, was the reason that this took a long time, or such a long time, was because it was the first open space subdivision that they had gone through, the planning board had gone through, where there was open space that had to be designated that way. So it took them a little bit longer to get through it and get everything that they wanted. But primarily, everybody left the meeting happy. The board left happy, and the developers and everyone else did. So that was really, I mean, there were some other minor things that happened, but you've all got reports on it.
Can I just have, I know, and I missed the site walk at the property in regards to the front portion, so, but, and we had discussed this previously about getting, can we get, now that the plan's been conditionally approved, can we get a copy just in a small version distributed to our boxes, just so we can see the 2 different areas of open space that are approved at this point, the one in the front and the one in the back, because they are both to be transferred to the town.
But it's designated, the lines are drawn, more or less. Yeah, I think, I think that's available.
Yeah, so.
Didn't we get that the other night?
Who was the surveyor, you said?
We got a copy of what is being proposed. Yes.
So if Doucette Survey is a surveyor, which Jerry says he is, then
Yeah,
he can provide it to us electronically, and you can print it out as 8.5 by 11, and it's real simple. They don't do the whole reduction thing. Okay. I would like to see it. Glad to hear that they've made decisions and moved forward, and hopefully there's that possibility for the town. Any questions for Councilor Branch on the planning board? Okay. School board, and I think, I don't know, is there a written
No.
Okay, Counselor Pulaski, go ahead.
I was unable to attend the school board committee before the joint meeting tonight, and you all heard the joint meeting tonight.
I think we're pretty updated.
Yes.
It's very good. Is there any committee that someone would like to update on that's not on the list?
I would like to, for the future, add, and it has been in there in the past, but I don't see it tonight, and I would like to add the Heritage Advisory Board, of which I'm the rep from the council, which is not on there, and also the Riverwalk Committee, of which I'm also the rep from the council. And I don't have anything tonight because I have not received the minutes of those meetings.
Okay. Can you please share that with Chairman Jarvis so she can? Okay. Anybody else? Great. Old business, other business. Hoping that no one has anything, so we can go home.
Very quick question.
Counselor Pulaski?
How's it working on the procedural matters?
I am delinquent, and I know that when Chairman Jarvis comes back, she's expecting to have a draft for her to review. I was hoping to do this weekend. It didn't work out, but it's on the agenda of my own time to prepare that draft, and I think we probably end up discussing it to August, either business meeting or workshop. Jen has indicated that since the business meeting agenda at this point is very short, she will want me and Al to add, because she won't be back till the day, like the night before the meeting, so she's not gonna be able to set the agenda. She has asked that, given the limited business meeting part, to have a section devoted to some of the agenda items that we had hoped to do tonight. And I'll work with Al to figure out which ones are the ones that we can get through in whatever time might be left. And this might be one of them, if I can get the draft together.
So you actually have 2 more weeks.
Plenty of time, exactly.
Jen's gone for 2.
It will be done, yes.
I have something.
Okay, Councilor Branch.
I believe this falls under old business, discussing the Spring Street parking lot. Where are we as far as stopping the people from parking there overnight? I drive by there every morning, approximately 6:30. I would say there's a minimum of 30 cars parked in the gravel area. If I'm one of those people that's parked on the paved area, that's paid for that permit, and I see those people getting a free ride, I'm not happy.
And I'm not-
How difficult is it? I know we've talked about there's an ordinance involved and everything else, but how difficult is it to just simply post that at the entrance? No parking, no overnight parking unless permit.
Absolutely. If the council, we will probably have to go through and work out the ordinance and everything here in the future. But
Right.
clearly, there is no problem, if the council does not object, putting up a sign, just as you said. It's public parking, but overnight parking will be allowed only by permit,
Right.
period. All other vehicles will be ticketed and or towed.
When is that sign gonna go up?
Well, I think I could have it up by first of next week.
See,
I will certainly give it a good try.
believe that as you'll remember, argued pretty strongly.
I understand.
We don't have the authority to just regularly do that without the ordinance being consistent. I don't believe it is, and if you, so.
That's
I believe
what
it
don't
is. I've
understand.
reviewed it.
I agree with Al.
Those
I
are
think it is.
that is the criterion. And
Yeah.
there's no overnight parking in that lot. I mean, we just
But-
extended the lot. We bought more land.
Yeah, we
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
and we never
I-
really opened it up for parking to be,
Yeah, to begin
you know, I
Right,
mean, there's
but-
no lines drawn.
Well,
not
it's
paved.
pretty hard to.
Oh, I know, it's not paved, and you know, what's gonna happen when snow? I mean, I don't believe you're planning on plowing that lot during the wintertime.
That I'm hoping that the parking study will shed some light on what we might be able to do on a longer-term basis with that area. Absolutely, I guess you know what happens when you plow crushed stone.
Yeah, no, I know, and I'm just feeling the frustration of the people that are paying to park there. And just a little bit further on that same topic, with the parking in front of the library. When the library's open for business, okay, if you're walking on that sidewalk, you have to go in the road to get around, okay? I believe that the library is designated for 11 spots out back. Shouldn't they be using, and plus there's still free spots during the daytime anyway, shouldn't they be using those spots and maybe designate that as a sidewalk out front?
Well, they're working on it. It's an historic building, and I don't know if they've got the approval yet. I think they're close to it for some changes out in the front of that building.
From who?
Historic historic preservation, you know, they go through, they
For
go
a
through.
ramp or
For the
something?
architectural, no, for the first sidewalk and the appearance blending it in with the building and.
But in the short term, to address his concern, maybe the highway public safety should review it and make a recommendation back to the council whether or not there should be
you, Jerry.
parking in front of the library.
Okay.
Right.
But I have reviewed
go, Jerry.
the ordinance, and basically, my feel, and I talked briefly, legal counsel, that's the same parking lot. We just bought more land.
Right. And not only that,
our
Al.
policy there is no overnight parking unless
That's,
permits.
I think that's all we've got to say.
Right,
And
in
I-
addition to that, if you have a parking permit and it is going to expire, you're not gonna wanna renew it, cause you can
Don't
park
go over
over there
there.
for nothing.
Yeah.
Exactly. The other thing too about the library, Isabel, Mrs. Donovan also, months ago had approached me and said that there is a problem. There's like a little area in front of the library where you're supposed to be able to walk, but the cars have gotta come up too close to the stairs, so she witnessed somebody with a baby carriage, I guess it was, is what she had told me, and she was very, very concerned of that. Because if you look, it comes off the sidewalk on Elm Street, it goes in front, and then it picks up the sidewalk going around. So there really theoretically is no sidewalk there, there are cars there.
It was originally designed to only have like one handicap parking space in front.
Parallel,
Yep.
probably, right?
Yeah, parallel, and maybe a drop-off
Right.
slot, that's it.
So does the council want this to go to the committee for them to make a formal recommendation?
Yeah,
I'd like
would-
to.
Yeah, is that a motion?
I
you
would
need,
like
or-
to.
Okay, so we don't need to do a motion, let's
Okay.
just send it
Yep.
to the,
That way.
so I asked the Highway Public Safety Committee to review the parking in front of the library and make a recommendation on how to proceed. Okay,
I'm good, thank you.
no problem.
One
Um,
quick thing.
If you could just give me a copy of the parking ordinance,
Sure.
so I can update myself on it, since I'm sure we'll be working on it. Counselor Wilford Hamel?
Yeah, while we're on the subject of signs, past year or so, we've cut right down on bicycle riding on Main Street, you know, sidewalks, from Beach Street Extension down to, I think, the library. But I've noticed that there's a sign in front of the old hand tub building and another one way up downtown somewhere, kind of antique, like you can barely see it. I was wondering how much effort it would take if you double the amount of signs, like maybe 4, and instead of having a bicycle with a slash mark, if you introduced no wheeled vehicles. We're getting scooters and that,
Segways.
skateboards and Segways. So it just makes the sidewalk a wee bit safe for especially older people stepping out of a store to get wiped out by a Segway.
Us older people.
I didn't say
Not
us.
there yet. Counselor Plosky?
I think one of the things on the no-wheeled vehicles, you would have to include something to be up to code on the Citizen, Americans with Handicaps Act. In other words, somebody with a powered wheelchair,
Yeah.
that's a wheeled vehicle,
Well,
you can't
that-
prohibit it.
We have an ordinance, and I think it goes
But
as
you
far.
would have to include that on the sign to
Well,
make it legal.
maybe we can check on
Or
that.
something
look at it. We'll look.
something to that effect.
Yeah.
We'll look at it. We'll
Or
look at different signage.
a high-powered wheelchair. We can't have that.
Nothing over 15 miles an hour.
Right.
Perhaps maybe we could take a look at the areas,
Okay, because you can hardly see, I doubt if anyone would admit that they know there's a sign there.
I think you're right.
I'd appreciate that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second.
Second. Fourth. and
Brian was
fifth.
just sitting there waiting for that.
Okay, Counselor Glennon made the motion to adjourn. Counselor Brandt seconded. Please, any discussion? Please call the roll.
Counselor Jerry Hamel.
Aye.
Counselor Glennon.
Aye.
Counselor LaBranch.
Aye.
Counselor Plosky.
Aye.
Counselor Wilhelm.
Aye.
Counselor Hart.
Aye.
This was a very good and informative session. Whoever put it together, thank you.